Hi everybody, thanks for joining me at Melinda's Rubber Room. I'm Melinda Pierce and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I wanted to jump on real quick to show you how I made this card. I actually made a bunch of these today, and I wanted to show you how quick it is to do some of these die cuts using the Stamparatus. So these stamps and dies are from the, what's the name of the stamp set? Friends Are Like Seashells. And it's this stamp set right here, and it has a bunch of dies that go along with it. This stamp set and die can be found in the mini catalog, which ends in the end of June. So there's no telling when this is going to be sold out and not available again, so you might want to pick that up as soon as you can. I'm also going to be using Seaside Spray paper. That is this lovely paper back here. That is one of the retiring colors as well. So that will only be available through the end of May. So make sure you pick that up. I'm sure it's going to sell out quickly. And once it's gone for good. And that is the case for the ink as well. So again, that's Seaside Spray. All right. So I'm going to point you down on my work surface so you can see what I am talking about. So the first thing that I did was I took the dies and cut out a whole bunch of little die pieces. So I have the little silver dollar, this little shell, little sea star, a couple of the greenery pieces. So I cut out a whole bunch of those with the dies. I put the dies down on all the dies down on a piece of white paper, and then I just ran it through the cut and emboss machine and cut a whole bunch of them all out at once without having stamped them. And then I brought my Stamparatus out and I took the reverse images, the ones that I cut the images out of, and I cut them apart so that I would have enough room to ink them up separately. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and tape those down to my background paper to secure those in place. And again, I want to make sure that they're far enough apart so that I can use different color inks on them. And I want to make sure that they don't move around on the paper and that the paper doesn't move around too much. So I actually have the magnets holding the background paper in place. And that way, once I get all of my stamps lined up, I should be able to stamp a whole bunch of them all at once and not have to worry about lining them up again. So the hardest part of this is getting it lined up to begin with. And then once that's done, you could just do a whole bunch of them all at once and not have to worry about lining them up again. Okay, so those are my reverse or my cutout images. And then I'm going to take my stamps. I'm going to turn them upside down. So this is the stamping image. So this is the image that you would ink up and stamp on your paper. So I'm going to turn that image down so that it would stamp on my paper. And I'm just lining it up with that cutout that was made with the dies. And I want to make sure that the stamps are sitting in that cutout area just perfectly. And you can kind of feel them fall into place if you move them around on your paper. A few more here. Again, the raised image of the stamp is facing down onto your Stamparatus, and the flat side is facing up. So these two are kind of leaf type images, and those are both going to be green. So I just put them next to each other so it's easy to ink those up at once. And this little star has one little edge of the star that's a little thinner than the others. So I think that is this one. think that looks about right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close my plate from the Stamparatus, and that is going to pick up the stamps. I want to try to hold my paper in place so that they don't move. Get your paper back into place. And then I'm going to grab my ink colors. So for the star, I am using the Seaside Spray, which is the Retiring color. This is such a pretty color, I'm really going to miss it. It's just a really light, kind of bluish purple. And it actually helps when you're inking up your images to put a stamp pad underneath here. It just gives you a little bit more support. So the sand dollar I'm doing in crumb cake. The greenery is mint macaron. And the tiny little shell is Blushing Bride. And then I'm going to take my pieces that I had previously die cut. I'm going to match those up into the little cutout images. Probably should have done this first so my ink doesn't dry. Okay, so those are all in place. I'm just going to close this up and hopefully they're all stamping in the right place. If you want to add an extra pressure on your plate, you can take the back of a punch and just kind of apply that right on top of your stamps. That way you make sure that they're getting nice, good pressure on those stamped images. Lift them up. And you can see the little star, the little sand dollar, and the tiny little seashell, and a little greenery. Sometimes they're a little hard to get out of your paper, so you can just use the pick-a tool and get that right out. Okay, so you have all those 5 images all stamped. Looks like my sand dollar is a little off. I could just go back and trim that a little bit if I wanted to. So again, I'm bringing back the card that I made. So this is the base is crumb cake. This mat is, what is that? Misty Moonlight. That's one of the in colors. Sorry, it's hard to do this at night. Misty Moonlight is the border. And then the Seaside is this lighter blue color. This paper down here is from the Sand and Sea Designer Series paper. It's one of the reverse sides of one of the main images. And a scrap piece of that. So the way that I did this edge here is I just tore it. And when you're tearing your paper, you want to hold one edge with your left hand and pull with your right, and you're going to pull it forward and kind of move it back and forth, and that gives you that white edge. So you always want to pull forward. So this would be the main piece of your paper here. If you try to use the other side and pull it this way, you're not going to get that torn edge on this piece. So you always want to take care of which side you're pulling your paper from in order to achieve that white edge. Okay, so I've already done all this. I put my Seaside Spray through the cut and emboss machine using the Old World embossing folder. That's a beautiful folder. in the current catalog. So I'm going to raise some of these images up with my dimensionals. So I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this little sand dollar a little bit. It's a pretty easy one to cut with your scissors if it doesn't get quite lined up right. And I'm going to raise that up. So I just think that using the Stamparatus in this way just makes it so much easier to cut out all these little pieces at the same time. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're having to stamp the images and then individually match up all of your stamped images with the dies, and it just can get a little cumbersome and fussy to do all those little pieces. So this is much quicker, and I just find it's easier to do. I'm just going to lay a couple of those sand dollars or those seashells down. Put some of the little greenery down. And I had cut some of these extra ones out previously prior to doing the video, so I already have them ready to go. So what I'm doing is I'm layering these. So some are raised up and some are adhered down directly onto the paper itself. So you have a couple different layers of embellishments on your card. All right, so there is the completed card. Hope you enjoyed that quick tutorial on how to use your Stamparatus to stamp multiple little die cuts all at one time. And thank you for joining me on Melinda's Rubber Room. If you'd like more information, please message me in the comments. You can join me at Melinda's Rubber Room on Facebook to get more information about the projects that I'm working on and the Zoom classes that I'm offering. All right, have a good night. Bye-bye.